Let me tell you something strange about silence in the digital age. We live in a world where nearly everything is broadcasted. Birthdays, coffee cups, sunsets, breakdowns, victories, even pain dressed up with filters. And yet, some people remain completely unseen. They scroll quietly. They observe deeply. But they almost never post. You probably know someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. And the question everyone wonders is always the same. Why? Why stay invisible in a world obsessed with being noticed? It's easy to assume they're shy or introverted, but that's barely the surface. There's an entire psychology behind silence, a quiet rebellion against a culture that confuses attention with meaning. For some people, silence isn't emptiness, it's control. It's choosing what the world never gets to touch. Social media has reshaped how we define ourselves. It rewards noise. It applauds display. Yet those who stay in the shadows, they're often the ones who see everything most clearly. They observe without interrupting. They think before reacting. They analyze before speaking. Psychologists have found something interesting. People who rarely post often score higher in self-restraint, introspection, and emotional independence. They're less shaped by comparison, less addicted to external approval. They're not trying to prove who they are. They're trying to understand it. And in a world drowning in performances, that's rare. Because let's be honest, most of what we share isn't communication. It's identity construction. Every post quietly asks, "This is me? Do you approve?" But when you stop posting, something shifts. You detach from digital applause. You stop thinking in captions. Moments become yours again, not props for an audience. That's the hidden psychology of the ones who don't post. They crave authenticity in a space that often feels staged. They don't hate social media. They just don't recognize themselves in it anymore. It's not rejection, it's protection. It's refusing to shrink your life down into highlight reels. Because once you've seen how easily perception can be manipulated, you begin to treasure what can't be posted. Silence, depth, imperfection, truth. Some people disappear online after a quiet kind of burnout. Maybe they used to post everything until one day it stopped feeling real. Every beautiful moment they shared came with an invisible pressure to top it. They weren't living anymore. They were performing, so they slipped away. No announcement, just absence. But here's what most people misunderstand. Not posting doesn't mean not feeling. It doesn't mean they don't care. It might actually mean they care too much. About meaning, about presence, about keeping certain moments sacred. There's a concept in psychology called psychological ownership. The sense that a memory or experience belongs solely to you. Posting it dilutes that ownership. It becomes public property, open to misunderstanding, judgment, even ridicule. So those who stay offline are often protecting their stories. They keep their moments untouched, unedited, uninvaded. Maybe that isn't withdrawal. Maybe it's freedom. Think about this. When was the last time you did something meaningful without feeling the pull to share it? That urge isn't natural. It was trained into us. Years of likes and dopamine loops conditioning our brains to equate visibility with value. So when someone steps outside that loop, it looks like rebellion. But really it's healing. They cook without photographing it, travel without tagging it, feel without explaining it, and in that space something awakens. A self that doesn't need an audience. But silence isn't always serenity. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of judgment, misinterpretation, rejection. There's a form of anxiety psychologists call self-presentational pressure, the feeling that you're being watched even when you're not. For many, that's exhausting. They worry about being misunderstood or, maybe even worse, ignored. So they retreat. Not because they don't want connection, but because the cost of visibility feels too high. They want to be seen, just not in the shallow, performative way the internet demands. And ironically, the quietest people online often have the loudest minds. They're not absent, they're overflowing. They just choose stillness over spectacle. There's something philosophical about that silence. In a world screaming, "Look at me," choosing invisibility becomes a statement. It says, I exist beyond what you can perceive. These people scroll through others' lives, smiling, nodding, sometimes aching, but rarely projecting. Because they understand something most don't. Not every experience is meant to be witnessed. Growth happens quietly. Healing happens privately. Transformation happens unseen. And after living through enough private evolutions, you realize something powerful. Being unseen is not the same as being insignificant. It's actually where your identity forms, not where it performs. Social media promise connection, yet often leaves people lonelier than ever. When you stop posting, you stop chasing digital closeness and start noticing who checks on you in real life, who remembers you without reminders, who shows up without being prompted by a status update. That kind of connection feels heavier, warmer, more real. People who don't post often build relationships that don't need proof. They find comfort in the unshared moment. They let life unfold naturally instead of turning it into content. A part of this is identity security, knowing who you are when no one is watching. That isn't arrogance, it's peace. And strangely, those who don't post often have the most interesting lives, but they share those stories in person, not through screens. Real connection to them is found in silence shared with someone who understands, not in comments from people who don't. They don't need applause to exist. They just need to live. Maybe their silence isn't emptiness. It's depth, the calm that comes from no longer needing to explain yourself. In a world where everyone is performing, the ones who stay quiet remind us of something. Not every truth is meant for the crowd. Not every moment belongs online. Some things deserve to stay untouched by algorithms and opinions. So the next time you notice someone who never posts, don't assume they're hiding. Maybe they're just living. Maybe they found peace in the quiet corners the rest of us forgot existed. Because being unseen doesn't mean being alone. Being quiet doesn't mean being empty. And sometimes the most honest expression of who you are is silence. In the end, we're not meant to be performances. We're meant to be people. And the ones who never post, they remind us of that with every unfiltered, unbroadcasted, beautifully invisible moment.